Welcome, Kate. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Richard. I'm excited.
Oh, fantastic. Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your yoga background?
Yeah, okay. So I am a yoga teacher since about 2013.
Okay.
Also qualified as yoga therapist last year. And
That's interesting.
yeah, really love that. Love that. It's very special work. And branching more into that. But I began yoga, I was probably about 16, I think, when I first went to a class, and I got no recollection of what drew me to it.
Okay.
I can't remember at all.
Just fancied it?
I just remember that I wanted to try it, and I didn't know much about it. And there was a lady teaching it in a local kind of community centre, and she was probably in her late 60s.
Okay, yeah.
There was a lot of people in that class, maybe like 50 people in this
wow.
upstairs room. It was hot, and everybody's quite close, and a lot of them were a lot older than me, and I was just kind of in awe of what everyone could do. And I was like, this is really a bit different, and it appealed to me in that sense. And then I was in sixth form at the time, so I would have done some yoga off and on, and I couldn't find anywhere that taught it when I went to university, or I just didn't find the right class for me. And then after university, I started going a bit more regularly. And it was on a trip to India. We went to my husband's best friend's wedding out in India, and we were there for 10 days, and they offered it in the hotel every morning. I was like, I'm going to go every morning because I know I'm going to enjoy it. And the first morning I went, and the teacher said, we do one-to-one, you should sign up for one-to-one. I was like, yeah, I'll sign up for anything. I'm here for 10 days, I'm going to enjoy myself. So I signed up for one-to-one. I think I had to be there like 6 a.m. And then nobody else ever came to the class. So I ended up having this teacher to myself for like 2.5, 3 hours for the whole time. And after about 4 or 5 days, I can remember coming out and saying to my husband, I feel really different. Like, I don't mean physically, I just feel like I'm on another planet when I walk out from that session. And that was when it really kind of hooked me in. And I couldn't understand what was going on, and I didn't need to, but it was having an impact physically, obviously, but in other ways as well. So after that, I think I started going to classes once a week with a wonderful teacher called Audrey Blow, who is still teaching in South Wales. And she encouraged me to do, so she's a British Wheel of Yoga teacher.
Okay.
That's kind of the governing body in this country. And she encouraged me to do the foundation course, which I was really interested in, because you just learn more. You learn more about the philosophy and why we do the asana and all sorts of things. So I did that, and it was really nice because I did it with my mum. We did it together over a year. And then as you come to the end of that course, they start to say, the teacher's like, okay, we're coming to the end. And the only other option really was to do the teaching diploma.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I was like, I don't really want to teach yoga, but I don't want to stop learning to this level. I can't go back, kind of thing. And I suppose at that time there wasn't podcasts and everything that you could just submerge yourself. You could find out stuff on the internet, but I wanted to keep being taught by good teachers. So
of course, we grew up in an era without the internet to start with.
Exactly.
And then, all of a sudden it comes in and there's all this information online, which is fantastic.
Incredible. It's incredible.
But back when we were learning things at school, you had to go to the library if you wanted to find
like
something out, wasn't
Encyclopedia Britannica.
Or know somebody who knew more than you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That's really interesting. Yeah, you mentioned something there about what was going on for you on the inside, and I kind of get a sense of embodiment, and that's really something that I've got out of yoga when I've done yoga myself. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more for people, because I think there's that sense of embodiment is quite interesting.
Yeah, so when you practice yoga, every day you get, whenever you practice, you get the chance to connect with your body. And quite often when I teach now, one of the first things I'll say to everybody is come into your body, welcome your body today, because a lot of the time we're in this amazing body, but we just take it for granted. It does all of these things for us, and also it's sending us messages all of the time. So when we practice, we get the opportunity to really pay attention to what the messages are and what's happening on the inside, because a lot of people's focus is outside. me included, you look into the world outside, you look into other people, and you take in the podcasts and the information from the teachers and everything. But what is the impact on the inside? And yoga really helps you to kind of figure that out, and it changes all the time. So it's like, and also people are generally very interested in themselves once they get over the fear to connecting to themselves. And you come at it from a point of curiosity rather than judgment. And then it's like, oh, that's really interesting. My right shoulder is uncomfortable today. And how long has that been? What else does it impact in my body? What is there any kind of emotion that connects with that part of the body, and all of these sorts of things? So it's fascinating. It's like unraveling yourself bit by bit.
That's a really good way of putting it, unraveling yourself bit by bit. And the emotional connection as well is very real, isn't it? I've been in yoga classes and people have been stretching out and all of a sudden just started crying. It's just like that release for a lot of people. When you connect with something that's been trapped in your body for a while and you physically release it, there's quite often an emotional release that goes along with that as well. It's really powerful stuff.
It really is. And that is really the essence of yoga therapy. So
that's just something I wanted to ask you about next, because yoga therapy is a new concept to me. I haven't heard of it before, so I'm fascinated to find out.
Brilliant. It is quite new, certainly in this country. And when we practice yoga therapy, so we're very much, in yoga in general, we believe that the body holds on to things. So in terms of trauma, if you have a trauma and you think that you've dealt with it, you've had talking therapy, which is great, and there's obviously a place for all of these different types of therapy. But sometimes you can talk as much as you want, but if the body hasn't let go of that experience, you're still going to hold on to it. And some way that people might relate to this. So for example, I'll use the word a trigger. So, if you have an emotional trigger, so something that will regularly create a reaction in you that is very familiar to you, it might make you a bit uncomfortable, you might not really understand it. So when from a yoga therapy point of view, what we would be looking at is with that, and we wouldn't talk about this necessarily. We wouldn't it's not a talking therapy, so it's very much working with the body.
So it's not something you even necessarily need to explain to people. You can just work with it with them.
Exactly.
I love that concept. I really do. And it's so engaging that. Do you know what I mean? From a point of view of I think of kind of therapies that work beyond talking and working with the body in that way without talking about it. I'm not quite sure what it is that fascinates me about that, but it is really fascinating. There's a lot in that for me, and as a therapist I work with embodiment quite a lot, and I know quite a lot of other talking therapists who also bring a sense of embodiment into the room. So this sounds like another layer of working with the body that I haven't found out about yet.
It really is. And it's the fact that you don't have to say, so it's not, so because I'm establishing that side of what I do, I've been thinking a lot, how do you put this into words that people understand? Obviously, one of the best things is going to be word of mouth. Once it starts, I think it will roll, because people will say, I had this experience, and they might not even be able to verbalize the experience, but because it feels good to their body, the body has impact on the mind. The mind has, the mind, body, breath is the sort of trio of yoga. They all impact on each other. What happens to one is always going to affect the other. So if the body feels more settled, then the mind will, then the breath. And we just, there's a lot to say about yoga therapy, but in essence, you're kind of working with each individual's body and trying to relieve symptoms or create more freedom or more flow of energy. So I'm sure you've heard of chakras before. Many times. We talk about that in the yoga world, and there's a chakra bracelet on. Beautiful, yeah. But if you've got a blocked chakra, quite often a symptom will manifest around that. So if it is, for example, I'll say Svadhisthana, sort of tummy, solar plexus area, you might have constipation or IBS or something like that. So we start to do different yogic practices which will help to open that area and just create more flow. Work on that stomach area where where the blockage is. That's one way of doing it. But it can go a bit like what you were saying about the creative therapy. It can go off on really interesting tangents. So I had one client who finds it very difficult to concentrate.
Okay.
And finds it very difficult to retain information. But we really discovered with her that actually if she works with her body and not her brain, it was very powerful. So we used tapping techniques and things to kind of really, and even chanting, things that cause a vibration in the body, and then that feeling is familiar and it helps to release other things without having to revisit a trauma verbally or anything like that. And quite, it's not with yoga therapy, quite often they're not coming in saying I had this traumatic experience, and we don't ask for that. It might come up in the conversation as things start to get revealed from the body, but it's not it doesn't need to.
No.
The practice, the therapy will still work. And really, I mean, the beauty of it for me is that's what yoga does anyway. With yoga therapy, you're just working on a much more bespoke level with individuals, and they don't have to be yoga practitioners either. They don't need experience of yoga or anything like that. So it's really special.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like and kind of works with quite a lot of different things as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So how long have you been practicing as a yoga therapist?
So I graduated last year.
Okay.
And as yet, I'm kind of establishing that. So I was also made redundant from my job in February this year, which was a real opportunity, because great, now I can really start to promote the yoga therapy. My classes have increased. Actually, this afternoon, I'm starting a new class for Sport in Mind. Have you heard of them?
I've heard of Sport in Mind, yeah.
So that's really exciting. And that's all for to support mental health as well.
Yeah.
So lots of different strands are coming together. And the yoga therapy, I'm just getting my website finished and some flyers. And then I'm going to hopefully start getting some clients and build it gradually as we go into the autumn. So
fantastic.
Exciting times.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So is it a yoga therapy class, or is the yoga therapy more like a one-to-one?
One-to-one.
One-to-one, yeah.
You can do it as a class, but for me, I think I want to start one-to-one. I did, in fact, the reason that I was interested in the course, I was asked to teach a group of people with fibromyalgia.
Oh, okay.
This was
interesting.
Quite a while ago, maybe like 2017. And I soon realised with that group of people, they had a gift because of their fibromyalgia, they already had to listen to their body. Because if they didn't, it could really change the outcome of their day. So they already had that skill, which is something you try and teach in yoga when people come. It's like, listen to your body, don't overdo things, don't push it too hard.
They're already listening because their body's been screaming at them.
Exactly.
I mean, fibromyalgia is one of those things that it's a condition that is really misunderstood quite a lot. And what's the other word? Really hard to diagnose. I've got a friend who has it, and it, the battle that he went through with his doctor just to try and get like a piece of paper signed to say you have fibromyalgia. Yeah,
I think there's a lot to be found out about it. But from my understanding, basically, like I said before, the body is sending us messages all the time. Fibromyalgia is really like, come on, you've got to pay attention now because I've been trying and we're here. So they came in with this kind of knowledge, and we worked really gently. So I had to learn to really scale back the physical practice, and we did a lot more of the kind of the breath work, the yoga nidras, the relaxations, and it was.
I'm doing this because breath work always really reminds me. I come back to this place in my body, and here it's almost center, isn't it?
Yes.
I come back to breath work. Always brings me back there. So I think that's probably where I put my focus when I do. When I've done a body scan, and then I come back into that place of, it's almost like that shavasana place you get to when you meditate. You kind of go into that connection with higher self, and for me, I always get a sense of kind of being here. It's quite interesting.
Wow, that is interesting.
Not quite sure what that's about. I've never worked it out, but it always comes back to the middle of my chest, and I don't know if that's a breath thing because I'm concentrating on the breath.
Could be. That's where the breath comes from.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I've forgotten where we were now.
Me too. That's the joy of doing this thing.
The fibromyalgia, yeah.
That's right, yeah,
fibromyalgia. So what I found was, as a teacher, I was thinking, gosh, am I giving these people enough? Like, it doesn't feel like we're doing an awful lot. But as the students, they were saying, this is amazing. I've slept really well. Things were improving in their life. And I was like, gosh, this is really working. And, I didn't have huge knowledge in how to work with specific conditions at that point. So I thought I wanted to do the yoga therapy course, and then a blessing of COVID was that there was all of a sudden time, and I got in touch with the teacher. It'd been on my radar. I'd done the first module and I wanted to continue, but it was a lot of money, it was a lot of time, and actually everything conspired to enable me to do it. So
the universe supplied you with an opportunity.
It did, and it was a real gift. So yeah, I'm really excited by that work and by yoga in general. It gives something to everybody.
It does. I found yoga when I was in a really difficult place in my life, when I was feeling quite low, quite depressed, quite anxious. I'd just been through quite a turbulent breakup, and I found it, and it really grounded me properly. And I was very lucky. The first class I went to, I just clicked with the teacher I had, and she was incredible. And I learnt so much. And actually, to this day, what I carried from that was everything I learned about sun salutations, because that's my absolute favourite thing to do, is sun salutations. Brilliant. I adore that set of movements. Just really, I don't know, 2 rounds and I'm like, bing, I'm awake and I'm raring and ready to go. Even from being half asleep, I can go and do that. And it kind of, it's like you said before, it kind of gets inside in a way that you can't almost explain. And I wonder if that's something to do with the release of it, or whether it's more to do with allowing energy flow. But those two things are kind of
both
linked up as well, aren't they? So,
yeah, and other things. I mean, it's working on so many levels. So we think of it about how it's working our body, and we can touch on how it's working the mind. But even things like you can go into the body and the nervous system and the hormones, and for me it certainly influences, like if I start my day with yoga, I make better decisions throughout the whole day. I'm more likely to have a celery juice and go straight to coffee, or it's incredibly powerful, and there's more and more science to prove this as well, but I'm very much a kinesthetic kind of person, and it's how does it feel. And I've never practiced yoga and not felt better. Or I've practiced and I've allowed myself to stop if it's a day that I really don't feel comfortable. But at least I'm connecting with the body enough to honour it and respect it, and because the mind will very quickly say, don't practice today, you could sleep a bit longer, or you could do the wash, you could do so many things instead.
The mind is a sly beast.
And it doesn't really always know best.
No, it doesn't always know best, but it will tell you that it does. Every time. See, I was just thinking again then as well, for people who don't know much about yoga, it might be a good idea to sort of talk a little bit about the different types of yoga, because I mean, there are how many different types of yoga? I always forget. It's a huge number though, isn't it?
There's a lot of different types.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different types of yoga. There's a lot of different types of teacher. So like I was saying, Audrey was British Wheel of Yoga, and so was another wonderful lady called Claire Chard, who I did my foundation course with, and then I did my diploma in Bristol actually with Andrew Newman. All British Wheel. So I was very much a British Wheel of Yoga student, and they taught Hatha. That's what that was my foundation. And Hatha, the literal translation is sun and moon, and it brings in elements of most of the different lineages of yoga. Then at one point I tried Iyengar. Really enjoyed that. It's very physical, and that was created for the military, I believe. Okay. So interesting. Yeah, very interesting. And it was very strict. The teacher was very strict. Like, he nearly didn't let me practice the first time I turned up without contacting him beforehand. And
wow.
It's really funny because you don't think of a
class,
yoga
you can
teacher
just rock
like that.
up and turn in and
Exactly.
go, yeah, come on in, join in.
That's a whole other story, but it was
your name's not on the list.
Yeah, completely. And then my personal practice now is Ashtanga, which again is a very physical practice. And for me, because like I said, a kinesthetic person, I need to really feel my body. I need to move my body every day. And then there's so many types. You've got yin yoga, you've got Dhru yoga, you've got, what else? Vinyasa flow, vinyasa.
Vinyasa is a lot of resistance work. I don't
even know. I mean, for me, vinyasa is part of Ashtanga. So, and it's a transition that you do in between each pose, and I think they call it vinyasa flow. I think it's a very moving practice. You don't hold positions, you just keep moving with the breath. But yeah, I'm quite myopic with Ashtanga now and Hatha. And
I remember I've tried Hatha and Vinyasa and probably some other stuff that I wouldn't even know the names of.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember the vinyasa being a slightly slower paced than the hatha. It wasn't
Okay.
quite as fast, but like you said, you weren't pausing to hold. So I think like doing so sun salutations are part of hatha, and to go through sun salutations, you would start off and then we'd get quicker and quicker and quicker. But with the vinyasa, it was almost like you started at one pace and then that pace stayed all the way through. It didn't speed up.
Okay,
It was
that's
quite
interesting.
an interesting.
And that's
I
like
noticed that
Ashtanga as
difference.
well. You stay with the pace of the breath, so you don't really speed
Whereas
up.
the
as
hatha
such.
felt a bit more like a workout for me. Do you know what I mean? It was more like you go in and you know you're going to get a good sweat on, and you know you're going to come out feeling like you've worked. You know, you've done something.
It really depends. It depends on the teacher. And for me, it depends on the mood of the class on the day. Like I might have a certain plan in mind, and then I assess the group and think everyone feels a bit tired. And sometimes I might stick with the plan because it re-energizes them, or sometimes we might go into a more gentle practice and just kind of serve the energy of the day, if that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense, yeah. And I think that's a really important point to serve the energy of the day. And you've already mentioned being able to change your energy in the morning by doing yoga, and that's something I find fascinating as well. Anything that can change your energy first thing in the morning, because that time in the morning when you've just woken up is when the brain will go, just hit the snooze button. We don't need exercise today.
Yeah.
It's fine. You can just get up and have coffee and do it, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's that ability to be able to know that you can get up in the morning and do something without particularly thinking about it, because once you've regimented those movements into your body, it's lovely. It's just there and you can just tap into it at any moment.
Yeah.
And make yourself feel great and amazing and connected with everything. I think of the body as being in three stages almost. You've got a physical body, which is very much here and now, and then you've got emotional body, and then you've got spiritual body. And for me, yoga draws a straight line through all three of those and just pulls them together.
In yoga, we actually talk about 5 bodies of Panchakosha.
Oh God, you're about to expand my knowledge. I love it. Fantastic. Bring it on.
I have to try and remember them all now. So you've got the gross body, which is the physical body.
Okay.
You've got there's the physical, emotional, spiritual. The breath counts as a body. There's another one, maybe enlightened. There's 5 sheaths or layers, and these are different bodies. The energetic body, so that's kind of what's going on in the mind, the physical body, the breath, and then there's 2 others which are a bit more towards enlightenment,
towards higher self kind of thing. Yeah.
I should know those, and if I sat here long enough, I'd probably remember.
I'm fascinated.
Exactly.
I'm going to have to go and read up about this.
Yeah, Panchamaya Kosha.
Panchamaya Kosha.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
It is really interesting, and of course they all have an impact on each other. So whatever's happening to one is going to impact on the others, and I
mean, as therapists, we say, quite often those of us who work with embodiment anyway will understand the connection between trauma here and trauma here. If it's a trauma in the mind, it's a trauma in the body, and vice versa. If you hurt your body, it's going to hurt your mind too. And taking care of one, taking care of the other, and just the act of physical exercise is, even just the gentle art of going for a walk and being in nature and connecting with what's around you is really answering all of those bodies at once.
Absolutely.
And it's little things like that we can do for ourselves that make the day easier, more palatable, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, more desirable, I think, because once you've hooked into that, right now at the moment I would love to find a yoga class that fits in with my schedule, but I don't have one. So for me it's like I just do a bit of yoga as and when I can. I know I need to do more of it. I'm super flexible through my hips, but my shoulders are like, forget it, so for me I know I need to work on all of this stuff and come a bit more from here down into here. I think a bit more. That's kind of what I'm needing at the moment. But I think there must be so many people out there like that who don't have a simple practice in their lives that could quite easily, just a little bit of effort can give you an awful lot of reward. I think that was my experience of yoga.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be yoga. It's whatever works for you. So I think getting out on water, but walking in nature, like you said, it doesn't have to be a grand thing. It's just whatever gets you motivated to move and connect. And yeah, and to me, there's yoga in all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of stand-up paddleboard yoga and
Yeah,
all
I
sorts of
teach
different.
that.
Yeah, I knew I was going to mention that. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. That's really interesting. How does that go? I mean, do you get people turn up who are petrified of falling in the water? I mean,
Yeah,
you know, is it?
sometimes, yeah. And that's, I mean, it's fascinating. Quite often you get people that have never done yoga and never been on a paddleboard, and yet they rock up to paddleboard yoga. And I love that, because it's like, okay, this is a completely, clean slate. I love it, all the ones that come. And it is quite a different, well, it's a mix. Some of the people that come to my paddleboard classes come to my regular classes.
Okay.
But there's another element of person that comes. So I've got a friend that comes and she just loves the paddleboard yoga because, one, it's outside, two, she loves water. So for her to fall in, I think she makes it happen sometimes because she wants to be in the water more than anything. And it's almost, I suppose I get quite a few younger people at those sessions as well.
I was about to ask you about age in a minute.
Yeah, it's a real blend. But the paddleboard yoga, so when I was asked to do that, I was quite excited by it. I'd seen it. Again, it was quite a new trend in this country. But I really had to sort of look and think, is this being authentic to my yogic self? Is this just kind of a fad? Is something a bit, because you get all sorts of yoga, and I've tried quite a few, and I've experimented like goat yoga and all of these kind of things. Goat
yoga?
That's the thing. I'll come back to that one.
Yeah, please do. Put in that.
But the paddleboard, I said, I decided I was going to do it. And actually, as soon as I went to, I did a module to kind of cover the aspects that you need to consider, because I'm not a water sports person. In fact, I've really improved my relationship with water from doing the classes as well. I've had a lot of benefits myself. But as soon as I got on that board and started practicing, I was like, this is very, very yogic, because the whole point of yoga really is to come to one point in the mind, a point of stillness. And of course, whenever you balance, even on land, you have to become more focused in the mind. On a paddleboard, everything is a balance. So you really kind of focus in on what you're doing, and you can, one of the benefits for the mind of that is that you can just, for a while, release all of the other stuff. So all of the stuff that's normally occupying the mind, all you're really thinking about is keeping yourself on the board. And that gives the mind a break and gives it something new to kind of concentrate on. So plus the fact that it's in a beautiful setting on a reservoir in Wales, and it's just,
that sounds idyllic.
It really is. It really is. So I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think probably my favorite part of yoga would be Shavasana.
Yeah.
I think I love that space that my mind can go to when I've physically exerted my body, and I've had that. Well, for me, with the ADHD stuff, it is a bit of hyperfocus. I can hyperfocus into yoga and ignore everything else, and that's quite a superpower, I think. So when I get to the Shavasana point, I'm led down. I don't go to sleep, but I'm definitely not here. I am away and floating, and all the colours are going on, and it's beautiful. And that for me was always my favourite part of yoga. That connection with self that I felt afterwards, and you come out of the room with an energy buzz about your body, but there's a real mind buzz going on as well, because you've just connected with the higher self, and it's like, my God, this is incredible.
It is amazing.
And I don't get there from meditating either, by the way.
No.
I meditate, I do mindfulness a lot, and that kind of brings me back very much here and now, but I don't get that same buzz that I get from Shavasana. Yeah.
And for some people, I often say Shavasana is the hardest part. It's the hardest part of the class, to lay still and not be told what to do, and to be back with their mind. And then it's like, so yeah, it's fascinating. It really is. And I think a lot of people learn to love Shavasana, but at the beginning it's difficult, especially if they're go kind of personality,
Yeah, absolutely. I think I used to really appreciate the Shavasana more at the end of a Hatha session, because I had felt like I had a good workout, and I needed that good workout to be able to get to that really clear space in my mind. I needed that body to be occupied for a long period of time. And I guess probably yoga classes mostly around about 45 minutes to an hour, most of them. I don't know what you've experienced yourself. The ones I've been to, I'd say normally around about that.
My class is generally an hour and a half.
Okay, a little bit longer, yeah, which is nice.
But they vary a lot. Not mine, but you can go to ones that are an hour or less even. But it's a real gift to yourself to practice. Whatever length of time you do, if you do 10 minutes, you're still going to benefit from that as well. So
absolutely. Let's come back to goat yoga. Dare I ask? I'm really fascinated to know what this is all about.
Yeah,
so pray tell.
It's literally yoga with goats in a goat pen. So I was very lucky to work at a community farm up until February as well. And goat yoga came up, and people would, they tag you and things all the time. And I was like, actually, I kind of get the benefit, because being around animals is really therapeutic as well. So I spoke with the brilliant team at the farm and said, can I try it with, and we sort of had a very serious conversation about it, and we said we're going to need to do it from babies, and ideally I'll be in with the mother before she gives birth, so she's used to me being around, she's not going to be worried about the kids and all of that kind of thing. So for a short while I did practice regularly with these goat kids, and it was brilliant. And the idea is you just get on with the yoga, and they get on with being goats, and then they start to come and have a little sniff around. Sometimes they jump on your back and all of this kind of thing. The health and safety aspect, luckily I never had to write a risk assessment for it, because I never ended up teaching it. And the reason we didn't carry on was because the goats that I spent the most time with, it was going quite well with, they forgot to get them dehorned. And you can't really practice with goats with horns. And then it just got busy, and I didn't have enough time to spend with the goats regularly to do it. But it's another quirky thing. But from my point of view, I think whatever brings people to yoga, like whatever works for an individual and gets them in, that's the important part. And then from there, they'll start their journey. So everybody kind of comes to it from a different place. And so many people say, I could never do yoga, I'm not flexible, or, that's partly the point, as you practice to improve flexibility. But also it's like, I think they have no idea how many different types there are or what's going to work for them. And you try different ones, and you try different classes, different teachers, and something will resonate, or some element of it will resonate, and then you can go further into that. So like Shavasana, I don't know if you know about Yoga Nidra.
No, but a little bit. I've done
so
a
that's
little
like
Yoga
Shavasana
Nidra,
heaven, because you're in Shavasana for a long time, and you really go into that deep relaxation. It translates into yoga sleep. And you're right. Some people do just fall asleep.
Yeah, I've had that happen. And I say in classes before,
exactly
people snoring behind me.
Yeah, that's exactly what that person needed. But quite like you, I will go to this kind of not limerence. That's not the right word. There's a place, and it's not sleep, but it's not awake. It's somewhere else, and I don't know where it is, but I like it.
I think it's higher self. I think you're out of this physical mind and into a connection with mind consciousness. Dare I use the word, because we don't really understand it, so I'm reticent to use words we don't really understand too much. And I love the fact that nobody can explain consciousness properly yet. Science can understand everything and explain everything apart from consciousness. For me, it is that higher self, higher consciousness, that third eye place. I've heard people talk about it like that as well, which is probably something that fits in with the whole Ayurvedic ideology of everything. Smacking my microphone. So yeah, I think for me it has got quite a lot to do with that. I think of it as less of being in this reality and being away in another reality. I think it feels like another reality anyway.
Or maybe like more connected to everything.
Yeah, maybe it's
like
more like
a universal consciousness.
Yes, and that's very much something that I'm a big fan of, Carl Jung's collective unconscious theory. I don't know if you've ever read about that, but it's very much what you talk about, universal. Everything's connected. Yeah, we are all connected spiritually, emotionally. Maybe not in the physical sense, but then that's going back to that idea of the different bodies.
Yes,
so we are all connected in the spiritual body sense, and maybe that's what you connect with when you connect with higher self, is everybody else's spiritual energy that is available at the time. Maybe that's what it's about. I don't know.
Interesting.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love picking all this stuff apart and wondering what it's all about.
I know.
I think you mentioned something just now as well, which I find really interesting, and that was that it's an individual journey. Yoga's an individual journey, and I think a lot of people have this idea that they're going to go to a yoga class and it's going to be 102 degrees in the room and everybody's going to be sweating, and that's a very specific type of yoga that I haven't seen advertised very much at all.
Yeah, that's another one, isn't it? Hot yoga.
Yeah,
Or
hot
they
yoga.
some people call it Bikram yoga.
Bikram yoga, yeah.
I haven't seen it. There was a hot yoga studio in Newport, I think. I've practiced it in London. I've practiced it in Cardiff. Very different. They had like little heaters in Cardiff. I think when I've practiced in India in heat, I mean, it's amazing. And I did really enjoy the hot yoga in London because I hadn't practiced in such heat before. But then I've got quite low blood pressure. And I could have passed out at any point. It's intense. But again, some people really love that. And of course, the benefit of the heat is that it kind of fast tracks the loosening up of the joints. And I'm not sure that, it's like, I'm not sure going in that fast, that quickly is beneficial to the body, because you're potentially going to overdo something because it feels safe. But
unless you're incredibly fit and limber.
Well,
maybe.
yeah, I don't know. I'm not dissing hot yoga. I don't know enough about it. I did really enjoy it. But yeah, you don't see it as much as other types. And I guess it's quite niche. Maybe you've got to...
Did it accelerate that connection with higher self for you when you were doing the hot yoga? So I'm just wondering, it's almost like you're stressing the body and the mind more. Do you know what I mean?
It doesn't feel stressful because
I don't mean stressful, but you are putting more stress on the body by being in the heat.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that has an effect on the mind as well.
I suppose, there's an intensity to it, which does affect the mind. I think I wasn't that far along at that point, so I wouldn't have been that aware. I was with my husband and some friends, and I just was loving the fact that we were all together doing it in this really hot room, and it was a new experience. But yeah, I think any of the different types have got the ability to get you to that place, and that's the point of like trying different ones and seeing what works for you. And I think also it's important for people not to expect that every time you practice yoga you're going to be in this like higher consciousness kind of. I mean, it can happen, but it's not a given. It's not. I wouldn't say go into your first class expecting that. It's just go and practice and see how it feels, and then go regularly and find a teacher that you enjoy and stick with it over a period of time. And then you look back and you kind of think, or even along the journey, you'll think, this is a really interesting thing that's happening.
Some of the patterns and movements are actually quite easy to learn. And I found, once I've learnt them and they're in my mind, I can practice them myself anyway.
Exactly. That's part of the beauty of it.
Something like sun salutations. I mean, you could do what, I don't know, 10, 15 rounds of sun salutations in 10 minutes. Quite easily, just running through. And that's a lovely little start to the day for me.
And that is a meditation in itself.
That's what it's meant to be, isn't it? It's the sun salutations are the greeting of the day, and then the moon salutations are meant to be the closing of the day. And, that's kind of how I've always understood it.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. And I think there is one practice where they just do something like 108 sun salutations, and that's the practice. But they say that the sun salutation will work every part of the body, which I believe it probably does, especially doing it over and over and over. And you build up a heat and a
common moves in it that people would know: the downward dog and child pose, and do you know what I mean? All those, and mountain. Those poses are pretty much universally understood. If you said downward dog to most people who've heard of yoga, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Because it's one of the most known moves. I think they're thought of as being very basic, but like you said, they work the whole body. And I certainly come out of that thinking, God, I didn't know I had a muscle there. What I mean? Oh my God, what's this about? And it does make you pay attention to your body in ways that you haven't before, because all of a sudden you discover this movement that you struggle to do, or maybe, like for me, my shoulders, just absolutely terrible. And I can remember being in downward dog one day and just feeling everything just suddenly went and just let go. And I was like, oh my God, wow. I've got movement I didn't know I had. It was wild. The
other thing I love is that it helps you recognise the two sides of the body. So
talk to me some more about that.
Well, so most practice you tend to work with both sides. So if you do something on one side, you do it on the other side, you balance. So you can constantly kind of recognise, am I right foot feels a bit bigger than my left foot, or random things.
Yeah.
Or if
yeah.
you've had a broken right ankle and not a broken left ankle, and it was years ago, but you can see still that there's an impact from that. So that again shows that the body can hold on to things, and it can release them as well. But sometimes we're so kind of stuck in our shapes and our patterns. We just think that's how we are and that's that. But actually, if you start to work with the body, it can really change.
Yeah, because yoga's not just all about stretching, is it?
No.
Some of it's resistance work, a lot of it is awareness, a lot of it is connection. But I think yoga gets a bad rap in the sense of people think, oh, it's just about stretching.
Yes.
Oh, it's just a stretching exercise thing.
Yeah.
No,
It's too slow for me.
Way more than that.
It can be really strong. I mean, it's all what it is about is the balance between strength and flexibility, and you need both of those elements to be fit and well. If you're completely strong and you have no flexibility, or vice versa, you're limited. Your range of movement is limited, and there's things that you can do really well, but then other things that you struggle to do. So yoga is all about balancing the strength and the flexibility to enable you to have that kind of rounded ability.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I think yoga's always struck me as something that everybody could benefit from. And I know you hear this said about so many things, but my God, if there was one thing you could say would make an impact on people's lives that you could do that is simple, that you can just do for yourself, yoga.
I totally agree.
Physical and mental, the two together, and the connection between mind and body. Actually, no, I'm going to throw that out the window, because it's not a connection between mind and body. Mind and body are one. There is no connection. They just exist together. I think that's something we need to learn in the West. Well, actually, no, we've forgotten. I think we used to know and we've forgotten. But the Eastern traditions and philosophies still very much, you look at Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, all those kind of practices, they all talk about mind and body being one. They don't talk about a connection between the two.
No.
And for me, that's something that yoga really hammered home. And I think we could all do with learning a bit more about it. I
totally agree. I'm very biased, but I do.
Well, of course we're very biased. I mean, we love it.
But it really could benefit everybody, and that's part of what I'm doing now is trying to teach groups who wouldn't necessarily come to yoga, either because they feel it's not for them, or they can't afford it, or they just think it's for stretchy people,
bendy people,
or for a certain demographic. And it's like, no, it really has benefits for everybody. And people have to come when they're ready. Like, you can't force it on them, but if you can give them the opportunity to experience it. So I was in a school, high school recently, and I taught all of the years 9 and 10. And of course, a lot of them giggled all the way through, but some of them you could see really it really resonated with them. And if it sows that seed that they go on and think, oh, that crazy yoga lady, that was okay, I'm going to try that again. She was doing weird things. But, it's just something to kind of give them a channel in. And, it is for everybody, but they have to find it when they're ready, and they have to find the right style, and they're not all going to find it. But to have the opportunity to experience it and then maybe take it further, I think that's what I'm really keen and excited about now. Like this class for Sport in Mind, I think I'm really excited about as well, because it's they want everybody that comes to those classes to have some kind of mental health condition, because it can benefit so massively, and it can. And it's really kind of working with people, and they don't have to be in different groups for me. I mean, anyone is welcome to any of my classes, but if it means that because I'm doing that one, I will encounter people that wouldn't have necessarily found my other classes, then it's another kind of road in.
You thought about doing a YouTube channel?
This is like the podcast thing. I need to just be braver. And I did do some YouTube sessions through the lockdowns. And most of them, I made them unfindable. So the people that wanted them had them.
Yeah.
And with the website recently, I've kind of released 2 of them, and I just feel nervous about that. And really, I think I just need to push it out there a bit more and see. And because, there's some great yoga teachers online as well. And again, for people that are nervous about going to a class or something, they can perhaps find Oh, sorry.
That's right. Don't worry. I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Problem with these mic stands.
I keep forgetting it's there.
Yeah,
now.
me too. I'm like, bang, my hands go around.
The yoga online, again, it's another way in. So if it means that somebody finds yoga in that way, and then they're more likely to perhaps try a class because they've experienced it and they think it's okay, there's benefits to all of them, really. Yeah.
What would you say to somebody who wants to try yoga, is maybe a bit curious about it but has a bit of resistance? What would you sort of say to them in terms of encouragement and kind of making it a bit more understandable for them?
I would firstly question the resistance. Like, what are you resisting? What do you think it is? And hear what they think, because they will have some kind of preconception of what they think it is. And then I would just encourage them to try. You know, what can you lose from trying? You go to a class, if you don't like it, at least you know that. But then I would still say try a different teacher, or try
that's an important
a different
one.
Style. But yeah, I would just, like I say, I'm not about pushing it onto people at all, because I don't think with any form of what you want someone to,
you can't push anything on anyone, can you?
You know, exactly. You can lead the horse to water, but you know, it's not. But they have to kind of find it when they're ready, to a degree. So yeah, I think what happens with me, a lot of people will say they just I don't know, they like the way that I'm living my life, so that is an appeal, I suppose. And then so many times I'll say, oh, it's because of yoga. So for example, I don't know, what did somebody say the other day? Oh, it was with my chiropractor. We talk about yoga all the time, but my feet and the arches of my feet. And I said, I could actually, if I stand relaxed, my arches will drop in. But I tend to hold them up, and that's because of yoga, because I'm so used to, and there's things that I do that I'm not even aware of until we start to dig a bit deeper. I'm like, oh yeah, that's because of yoga. This is because of yoga. And then, you know, they'll either try it or they won't. And I've got loads of friends who say all the time, I need to come to class. I want to come to class, but they've got to come to class and experience it. And that resistance is really interesting. I think a lot of time it's people don't actually value themselves. Almost, they don't value themselves enough to give themselves that time.
Oh, that's a really deeply and interesting one.
I know.
I like that a lot.
That might be a bit controversial.
No, not at all. I think you're absolutely spot on, actually. I was just thinking about that at the moment. And
I think they
you're
put
bang
everyone.
on with that,
they
know?
put everything else first. And actually, I've gotten a much more.
Well,
selfish.
I've been guilty of that myself before as well. You know, and if I'm absolutely honest, I've been really guilty of that before. And it's only, excuse me, anybody who's been watching my channel regularly will know that I've been putting out shorts about bits of exercise I've been doing and bringing that back into my daily routine, going for a cycle ride first thing in the morning rather than sitting down and drinking coffee and smoking 40 fags. Do you know what I mean? So I've been trying to change my life for the better, is the point of that. And I think, you know, we can all find our own levels of resistance in things and find reasons to not doing it and barriers to. But I think what you've just hit on there is really, really important for a lot of people in terms of any resistance to doing exercise or anything that's good for you. You know, even going to counselling or therapy or something like that, you get a resistance for that because people don't feel like they're worth it.
Yeah.
Am I worth this? You know, can I do this good thing for myself, or do I only deserve bad things in my life?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's really silently powerful.
It's something to think about.
It really is.
And
yeah.
even from the point of view, you know, they'll put everybody else first, which I get
People
it,
pleasers.
you know, especially if you've got children and, you know, people that you're responsible to. But in the last few years, especially, like I become very selfish about my practice because I know the impact it has, and I've got a really supportive husband, son. You know, I think the other day I wasn't, because I've had a bit of a shoulder issue for a little while. And I said to my husband, I'm going to try like not practicing, which is unheard of. He's like, and he went, are you sure? I don't think that's a good idea at all.
Who is this woman? What have you done with my wife?
I don't think that's a good idea for like any of us, because it impacts on everyone. So for me to have my practice, my foundation, and make that a really important part of my day, it gives me more to give to everything else. Yeah. And I really feel that. And so I make it a priority, and I selfishly make it a priority. And I'm proud of that because it enables me to be a better wife, mum, teacher, all of the things that I do in life, you know. So I do think value is part of it. And before, I would have been the person that was like, oh no, I've just got to make sure I do this for my son, or I've just got to do this, and you know, if I don't get the washing out, or there's so many other things you could do instead of getting up and doing yoga. So now it's like, I don't look at my phone. Well, I try not to. So in fact, most days I don't. The first thing I want to do is use the bathroom, roll out my mat, get on it, and just start, and then see how it goes. And even on the days when I really don't want to do it, I think we'll just do the first part, and then normally halfway through the first part, I'm like, I could probably get a little bit further than this. Maybe I'll do a bit more, and then it's like, yeah, I might as well just go to the end now because I'm quite comfortable. Yeah, and then before you know it, you've done it.
Yeah.
And always feel better for it. So
I think that's the thing, isn't it? You know, once you've taught yourself that something is good for you and you feel that benefit from it, it's much easier to get up and do it again, because you've already got a marker in your mind that, oh yeah, that felt good last time I did that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that again.
Yeah.
There's a great phrase I love, and please feel free to throw this back at me at any point, but you can't drink from an empty cup.
Yeah.
You know, you really can't. If you're a giving person, if you're somebody who is caring and you're constantly giving to other people, you need to remember that if you exhaust yourself, you have nothing left to give to anybody else. If you don't look after you, you don't have as much to give. And I find the more I look after me, the more I have to give to other people and those around me that I care about, those who are in service as my clients, or, you know, friends, family, partners, you know, all the rest of it. You know, you just have more of you when you fill that cup up more often.
100%.
You know, isn't that such a bizarre concept when you break it down? You would have thought it doesn't work that way, but it does.
It really does.
It really does.
And my wonderful teacher now, so I have to give, her name's Caroline Simpson. She teaches Ashtanga. She's got a beautiful Charlotte in Bristol, and such an inspiration. But she will quite often say, we have a conference once a month, and she says exactly that. It's like the you know, the plane's going down, you've got to put your own mask on first before you can help other people. And I think it's really important. I know it's really important. It's made a massive difference in my life. So
Absolutely.
It's prioritize at least things that are, like you say, are good for you. I was listening actually this morning to an interesting podcast, and they was talking about the concept of being stuck, and the podcast called Awaken in Love. I can't remember the lady's name, but she was saying about, you know, whenever you've got, because she was talking about addictions.
Okay. Yeah.
But she was sort of saying a really important question to ask is, what is the benefit of it? And she said that quite fires people up sometimes because they get quite defensive. But what is the benefit of that addiction? And there will be benefits.
No, always, yeah.
You know, even I think she used the example of, you know, staying in an abusive relationship, but the benefits will be, it could be financial. You know, you're safe financially if you stay in that place, or it could be there's a roof over your head, and you know, obviously there's some sort of security, which if you walked away would be gone. Yeah, and it really resonated. It felt like it fitted with that part of the conversation, but I'm not sure what link I've made now. It was kind of about the putting yourself first. And
yeah.
So this was and that was the point she said about nothing is easy. So she was talking about changing habits from addiction. So it's easy to take the cocaine and feel good instantly, but if you're trying to make a change for the better, the instant goodness, it's not instant.
No.
It's gradual.
Yes.
And that's really hard. But if you accept that and think, okay, so I've gone to yoga once, like I'm not going to suddenly be XYZ, but if I go consistently over a period of time, there's not an instant gratification in the same way as taking the drugs would be, but it's good for you. And it's easy to do the things that aren't when they have this instant. And then she said something really interesting about, you know, what are we hiding with that? What are we not confronting when we go to that addictive option every time, whether it's drugs, smoking, alcohol, sex, whatever it is? We're running away from something that we don't want to see about ourselves. We don't want to face,
we don't want to see, we don't want to understand.
And again, yoga helps us very gently see those things, because we're spending time with ourselves, and yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and a lot of these kind of behaviours you were talking about then are all, of course, driven by fear. You know, and it's when you find a resistance in somebody and you touch on it and it sparks something, that's all coming from a place of fear because that person's scared.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that I find about that sense of embodiment that you get from yoga, that sense of physicality and mind exercise, I think that for me is the good buzz, and that's that slow drip you were talking about. But I imagine it being like a tank. It's almost like the tank with the, for want of a better word, bad behaviours, addictive behaviours, that kind of thing. That kind of fills up and empties really quickly. But the other tank kind of drips in slowly and empties really slowly. So actually, over a period of time, that's filling up and staying fuller for longer.
Yeah.
Whereas this one will empty and fill quickly.
Yeah.
But this one is more sustainable over a longer period of time.
That's a really
do you
good
see
way
what I
of
mean?
looking
So
at
it's
it,
kind
yeah.
of like a... Yeah, it's a really interesting way of looking at it, and you've just got to keep drip feeding that one tank and just keep drip feeding it a little bit, and it stays full. You know, so you could probably go, you'd probably go to another place of looking at that and look at it just from purely a physical exercise point of view. Look at sportsmen, look at athletes, and they'll all talk about, I get a real mental buzz from what I do when I train.
Yeah.
It's not just physical, building my muscles, getting stronger, getting faster. It's mental agility as well as physical agility and performance. I find all that stuff so fascinating. I really do.
It really is.
Yeah, I was you mentioned just now as well, talking about what were we talking about before we talked about addictive behaviours?
So valuing yourself.
That's right, yes. It's that sense of value in yourself can come from so many different places. How much of that do you see going on when people come into yoga? Do you see people coming into your classes really like changing as a person as a result of kind of doing that yoga, as a result of connecting?
I suppose on a micro level you see it in each class. You see them come in and they're up here and everything's a bit
high
crazy.
vibrations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then at the end they come out of Shavasana and it's like, So you see that on a regular basis. And then when you're lucky enough to practice with students over a long period of time, some of mine have been with me for like 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
You kind of see it as that filling, that gradual filling up. It's something that feeds their life. And I mean, for me, through the whole COVID palaver, yoga was, I don't know what I would have done without it, really. And I really just turned off the news, threw myself into my practice, did my yoga therapy course. I did everything to kind of feed myself because that other narrative just wasn't beneficial.
No.
But I know so many people that say without their yoga practice through that time, it really kept us all on a grounded level. And the whole thing, one of the massive lessons of yoga is this too will pass, and you might be in an uncomfortable position, but you take a few breaths, you're going to get through it, and life's going to change. And life changes all the time, but it teaches you to kind of balance out and to take the rough with the smooth.
I love that concept. I love that concept of this will pass.
Oh yeah.
It's difficult right now, but this will pass. And I think we live in a society where everything is so fast paced and so easily accessible that it's really easy and simple to navigate your way around the difficult things without dealing with them.
Yes.
And I think that idea of sitting with difficulty, of sitting with something that feels uncomfortable and just allowing it to be, and then watching it change without you having really made much effort to it other than just holding it in the space. That's a concept I try to bring into therapy quite a lot. Because obviously, we all have resistance to difficult things. Nobody wants to deal with difficult things.
It's not
Why
nice.
would I deal with a
You
difficult
don't
thing
wanna
when
be
I can take the
uncomfortable.
easy way out? I don't want to be
Exactly.
uncomfortable. We live in a world where everything is comfortable and far too comfortable.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to bring into that something else, which is a concept I've had in my life for a long time. Of when I'm in a place where I feel really, really comfortable, I am at my least productive.
So true.
I am at my least productive. And you learn more about yourself, and you have more ability by pushing yourself through uncomfortable situations.
That's
and
when you
getting on the
grow.
other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's when you grow.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that really that I wanted to get across from this podcast today, talking to you about yoga, is it is a chance for personal growth.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a chance to really get to know your body and get to know your mind. And I think it gets a bad rap in the sense of, you know, people think you have to wear lycra and start weaving yogurt to go to a yoga class or something. Do you know what I mean?
Of course you do.
Well, of course you do. I mean, that, you know, pot of Yo Valley on arrival. But I think it does get, people do have that idea about it, and it's just such a simple concept that gets missed about it. Is this is a really great way to just gently improve yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I love about Ashtanga, so the practice that I do personally now, I don't teach Ashtanga, but I my personal practice, and that's something else that Caroline has taught me, is that you know, it's very easy to stay in the poses that you find easy and take some extra breaths there and enjoy them. It's the difficult ones where you grow, and that actually is where the work is, and that's where the healing is, and that is where you can really, and there's been so many times so with Ashtanga, it's a set sequence.
Okay.
You don't deviate from it. There's 7 series. Okay. I'm on primary series. I've been there a long while. Coming towards the end of it now, actually, but the theory is you do not progress onto the next asana until your teacher says that you're ready. So you get held at certain points.
That's very much like martial arts, actually, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know.
Well, I studied martial arts a little when I was younger, and if you're going for a belt, you have to attain a certain level of competency before your teacher says you're okay to take the exam.
Okay, that's
they wouldn't let you do it until
they
thought, you know, you can kick at a certain height and you can hold this pose and you can master this stuff, you know, and then you're ready to do a belt now, off you go. So it is that similar, and there is something
discipline.
martial about yoga and martial and disciplined and that regimented set of movements. So that's very fascinating that you just touched on that. Yeah,
it's been a real, because with my approach, like the Hatha yogas, I'll often say, you know, you have to listen to your body, don't push yourself. And I question that sometimes now, because I'm like, actually, you know, pain is a teacher. I don't want people to be in pain. I certainly don't want them to get injured. But actually, to spend a bit of time in that place of discomfort can really kind of open up a little treasure chest, because you have to go into the breath more. The breath is a massive indicator. So if you're struggling in a posture, your breath will speed up, and you know, Caroline will know, like, that's, you're pushing, you've got to breathe, and she's constantly like, breathe, but for me, what I find really interesting is like what happens in my mind in those parts. It's like, I'm supposed to be a yoga teacher, why can't I do this pose? And then all this stuff can start to come in, or you know, that, you know, somebody that's just been in the shala for a few months and they're all of a sudden they're all way beyond me, and it's like, that's their journey, they're on a different path, this is mine, and I'm not meant to be there. I'm meant to be experience this point here, and I need to stay here for as long. And in fact, the pose that I've been stuck on recently, I was genuinely like, maybe this is it for me in this lifetime. You know, maybe this is where I stop for the rest of my life. Genuinely, I thought that, because I just couldn't get there. And now it's starting to shift. And suddenly I get a new asana. It's like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing whatever she tells me.
Because so many times in my life, and this is something that I share with a good friend of mine as well, so many times in both our lives where we've got to the point of going, do you know what? I think I'm just going to give this up. And then when you get to that point of giving up, you're just about to throw it in the bin, and then the universe comes in and provides you with a whole new, something else you weren't expecting, and all of a sudden it goes poof.
Yeah.
And you grow and you take another level.
Yeah.
It's almost like you've got to get to the point of like, I'm ready to give up before the universe gives you an answer.
Sometimes.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I find that concept fascinating.
And it is that struggle. It's, again, the universe wants you to feel that struggle and make hard decisions and be uncomfortable.
I think life is meant to be about struggle at some points. I think that's where we grow. And I think it's in that resistance of struggle, which is the place where a lot of people don't find themselves, and they probably need to. I'm going to be open enough to say that, because that's genuinely what I believe. It's my opinion.
And you're right, people run away from it.
We're all
That is
guilty
a
of it.
very
I
human
have been
instinct.
too. I'm going
Me
to put my
too.
hand up and say I've been guilty of running away from things most of my life.
Yeah.
And when you turn around and face them and face your fears, that's
Yeah.
when you grow. That's when you learn. That's when you develop as a human being.
And they become less scary. And then something else will come along to teach you another lesson.
Yeah, because isn't it amazing how we can take something so tiny and then magnify it up into this huge, great big thing that it really isn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful when you can come into that mind-body space and relax and come out of it. I've gone into yoga classes before with huge problems hanging over me and come out of there feeling like I haven't got a care in the world.
I was saying,
this
the other day.
Oh
like the problem still exists.
They do.
But actually,
they
you
do.
just don't care about it anymore.
Yeah,
It's
exactly,
really,
exactly.
I'm just going to keep breathing.
Which is fascinating because actually, if let's say take a different path to dealing with a problem and just going to the pub and sinking vodka all night, and you'll have the same effect. But when you get up in the morning, your problems will still be there and you'll have a bloody headache.
Yeah.
Whereas with yoga, you still get up in the morning, your problems will be there, but you've had a lovely little mind holiday from it all.
Yeah,
is the
that's
way I
so
think
true.
of it.
Yeah.
It's like a little holiday in my mind when I go to a yoga.
And you're
class.
right that the vodka or whatever the stimulant is giving you that holiday as well, but in a slightly less healthy way.
And probably more destructive in every way I could think of.
Yeah.
So something else I wanted to ask you about, and we have a mutual friend who's been through an experience of this, and I want to talk to you about Kundalini awakening.
Oh, okay.
Because this is a subject that I'm really fascinated by, and something which I think isn't really very well understood. I'm wondering how much you know about Kundalini awakening.
Not a huge amount. I remember I think it was on the foundation course, and the teacher Claire, she described it as, so Kundalini, they describe it like a sleeping serpent at the base of the spine.
So that would be in one of the chakra points?
In Muladhara, in the base chakra, or just above possibly, but in this very lowest,
in that lowest point,
section.
Yeah.
And she said, so it's like the sleeping serpent, and through the practice of yoga and certain techniques, you can awaken, and you have to have open chakras for the energy to move. And they call it awakening Kundalini. So you awaken this very powerful energy. And she said, and it can shoot through your body, and you need to be with someone who knows what they're doing, because otherwise you could be a bit like mentally disturbed. And I remember thinking, I'm not sure where to go there. It's like, what? And it sounded like one of those mystical yogic things, because there's many like magical, mystical yogic practices that blow my mind, and I think, I'd love to try that one day. But I remember thinking I would only want to do that if I was with a Kundalini teacher who really knew. But actually, I don't think it only comes from Kundalini yoga. I think any kind of yoga can open things and create spaces. And I've got another friend, a lovely friend, who'd be really interesting for the podcast. So she comes to my classes, but she's also an Ayurvedic practitioner.
Oh, yes, please. Please hook me up with her after
I will.
this. Yeah, please
she's
do.
Great.
Fantastic.
So I know she's done a lot more Kundalini, and I haven't ever been to a Kundalini class, but I have certainly had physical experiences where I've felt that energy, and it's been for a short period of time. But I can't say that I'm any kind of expert on it. Maybe in fact Judith, the Ayurveda lady, she would be able to talk more about that. But the concept of Kundalini is it's this energy, the sleeping serpent that we can awaken, and it can be very powerful, create very powerful psychological experiences as well.
Yeah, and it's something that is traditionally brought on, as I understand it, under the watchful eye of an experienced yogi who knows exactly what they're doing.
That's what I mean, yeah, exactly. It would be Kundalini teacher, and And actually, I'm not sure. I don't remember hearing about it in Ashtanga.
Okay.
Specifically. So yeah, it's quite a niche area.
It's very much considered to be, a huge spiritual awakening.
Yes.
And quite experienced by some people as being very violent. And particularly my friend who had the Kundalini awakening didn't have it through doing yoga.
No, that was the same with me.
It came in from a different place. He was he was doing a lot of creative activity at the time, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
and it really woke something up in him, and all of a sudden it's just boom happened.
Exactly.
Oh my God,
I mean, the way
what's
that first teacher described it, it sounded like, you know, you'd like gone on a massive trip or something.
Yeah, almost. Yeah.
And that sort of put me off a little bit, because I think I'm not a control freak, but I think like I'm not really into drugs and things, because I have a fear of losing control or not being in control. But yes, it's a psychological. But also, I think, like we were saying earlier about the hot yoga, I think if you go dive straight into these things and you're not ready for them, then they're not necessarily, even though it's yoga, it might, I'm not saying it's going to be harmful, but I think you need to be under the guidance of the right kind of teacher.
Absolutely.
And thinking about it with the Ashtanga, maybe it does come in, but it's probably way up in the series. And all that we're doing is setting a foundation. Every practice, you know, you're kind of establishing foundations for things to go higher, because the ultimate aim of yoga is spiritual enlightenment. That's what the yogis kind of created it for. And all of the asana was to create this balance of strength and flexibility to enable you to sit. Asana means seat, so to sit in meditation for long periods of time, and that's where you really get to know yourself.
So that would be almost like the original experiences of Buddha, sitting for a long time and just meditating. That's very very yogic in itself, I presume. Yeah, that's quite interesting. I've never thought about it that way. But yeah, no, I mean, the purpose of it is, people think it's physicality and stretching and being limber, and that really for me is like a side consequence of going to do yoga. For me, it is about that headspace when I've done it more than anything else.
So the word Ashtanga means 8 limbs, and there's 8 different limbs to yoga. Asana is one of them, the physical. Pranayama, the breath. Again, I can't remember all 8 off the top of my head. I should have done my homework. But there's 8 different concepts that come into the practice. So for example, there's one which is all about how you live your life and how you are with other people and how you are with yourself, and not harming people. It's almost, some of it reminds me of the 10 Commandments. You know, it's like, thou shalt not harm, thou shalt not do this. And there's elements of that kind of feed into the 8 limbs. So there's all these different practices. There's karma yoga, where you do things for other people. You do things for the greater good, not just for yourself. There's all these different elements that come in, and asana is just one. And people think, well, certainly in the Western world, they think yoga is the movement. And yeah, it's a part of it, but it's not the most important part. There's so many other parts, and that's, you could be in a hospital bed and still practice yoga, because there's all the other elements that you can bring in, and there's a different type there's a different limb for each stage in life almost. So it's the breath is one on its own. So you could spend a lot of time just working with the breath, and you could come to yoga through that, because maybe you can't move physically, but you can breathe. And that's another thing that Caroline says: if you can breathe, you can do yoga. It doesn't have to be about the physical, and it really isn't. It's so much more than that. We come to it from the physical in the West, because that's how we're kind of conditioned. But my last yoga teacher was her name Amanda King, and she ran a class called her yoga school was called Inhale Exhale. Nice. Which I loved, because that was what drew me to it. Actually, I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting," because I like breath work. I'm going to go and have a look at that. And I think that concept of, there are so many different things to it other than just stretching and movement and being limber. I'm really glad you said all that, because I think it gets misunderstood quite a lot, yoga. I think so too. And I think because there is so much to it, and people hear little snippets, so you have to be mindful. You don't want to put people off. So some people think it's very spiritual, and it can be, but you go into a general yoga class, that's not what you're going to get hit with straight away. The spirituality comes more from, again, over time, and how it helps you to connect with yourself and other people in your life and the world. And when I go into the Shala in Bristol, you've got a group of people, so it's not unless it's a led class, you just get on your mat and you start to practice. You don't get told what to do all the way through. And the communal breath is incredible. To be in a room of people breathing so deeply and so consciously, and everybody, I think about this a lot lately. I think everybody, because I've had this bad shoulder, everybody in that room is struggling with something. and we can't possibly know, and we don't need to, again, we don't need to know, but it's kind of a communal support because we're all there together, and to just get on your mat at home is so totally different to being in that room with those people. And it's all very quiet. You don't necessarily get to know people because you go in, you get to do your practice, you go out, you can't really talk in the lobby, it's all very silent. But you've got a commonality with them that is really, and I admire each and every one of them. I don't know all of them, but to turn up there and have that discipline and do that practice and give themselves that time and make it important enough is huge.
You know what, when I first started going to yoga, and this memory's just come back to me, when I first started going to classes, and I was in a terrible place personally at the time, but I remember just that connection with other human beings. And like you said, you go in the lobby, it's all quite quiet because there's always other classes going on, or you'd be in a studio next door where there's a class already running, so you come and take your shoes off and roll your mat out and get ready, and just the connection with other people, just a smile and eye contact when you walk in the room from somebody you've seen last week.
Yeah.
And just that was, I felt like I did have a little place to go where I was welcome and nobody was going to ask me too much.
Yes.
And that for me was just exactly what I needed at the time. Yeah, I think there is something in that very much about connecting with other people when you need it, but not being in a place where people are going, oh, what's the matter with you, or poor you, or anything like that you don't really need.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, that feels like it's probably a really good place to wrap up, Kate, I think.
That
Anything
flew
else?
by.
I've gone like an hour and a quarter, I think,
Wow.
just over. So, yeah, I know it. Doesn't it just?
Yeah.
Doesn't it just? Is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. Just
we've
thank
been
you for having me.
All
And
around the houses,
I
haven't we?
know.
Which is really fascinating.
Yeah.
It's been a really, really lovely chat.
It really has. Thank you.
No problem at all. Do you want to tell everybody about your website? Because that's going to be up soon. We'll put it in the notes for the show.
Oh,
and
thank you.
socials, things like that, where they can find you, how they can get in
So
touch,
the
find your
best
classes.
place to find me right now is my Facebook group, which is called Yoga with Kitty, which
Fantastic.
brings up lots of obscure cat things. But
I can imagine.
mine is the one with people doing yoga on cupcakes. And
Cool.
as soon as the website is out there, obviously that's where I'll be putting it as well. But yeah, they can find me on Yoga with
No
Kitty.
problem. I'll put a link up to your Facebook group in the show
thank
notes
you.
for this one when we
Brilliant.
put
Okay.
it up. So,
Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Thanks for joining me, and welcome back anytime. Please
Brilliant.
feel free.
And
Lovely.
I'll send lots of other people your way.
Oh, please do. Please do. Fantastic. Thanks,
Thanks,
Kate.
Rich.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.